Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, who is here to speak with us. Would you be more comfortable with a handheld or a standing mic?
Whatever you think I should have. I'm just happy to be here in this room with all of you. So I hope that you asked all the hard questions of my good friend Madeline Dean. But my name is Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, and I am happy to be here among people who love this country. And you understand that this democracy is actually worth fighting for. That it's worth fighting for. You know, I've learned over the years that too many people who are in a position of public trust, they don't want to tell you the truth. They don't want to tell you the truth. There's a lot of disincentives to being honest with folks. And so let me start with a hard truth. If you came here today believing that there's going to be any one leader who is going to save us from this moment, I'm here to tell you that's not true. But if you came here today believing that collectively there is nothing that can stop us from meeting this moment, then I'm here to tell you you're in the right place. You know, I've been all across this country, and it's interesting that I'm here today because last week I was in Palm Desert, another Republican congressional district where the member was too afraid to come talk to their constituents. And I actually was there talking about Gettysburg. I think a lot about Gettysburg, legitimately do. A number of years ago, I ran for the U.S. Senate. And I gave a speech on the grounds at Gettysburg, and I want to say something today that I said then, those many years ago. I said that democracy requires something of us. It requires something of us. And each and every one of us know, particularly here in Adams County, that, oh boy, did it require something of those brave men on that field that day. That sacred ground. Where folks had to literally take up arms to protect this fragile experiment in self-governance. It required something of the suffragettes who organized in Seneca Falls and all across this nation because they understood that this country deserved to allow them to fully participate in every single aspect of what it meant to be American. Women across this country demanded it. We know that it required something of the folks who showed up at Stonewall with a belief that this country was big enough for people to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter where they're from or who they love or what color their skin is, however they show up in this country, that this country was big enough for all of us. And I think certainly about 60 years ago, how much it required of the folks who showed up on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And many of us know about the great John Lewis and others who stood on the front of that line, but I always like to remind folks that there were over 600 people on that bridge. And they didn't know what we now know, that that march and subsequent marches would lead to the passage of consequential legislation that would change the course of history. All they knew for sure, just like we know, that there were dogs at the end of that bridge. All they knew for sure is that there were state troopers armed to the gills at the end of that bridge saying, you better not walk across. All they knew for certain is that there would be water hoses trained on them as they walked across that bridge. People of different faiths, people of different race, people from different regions who believed that America, that our job, the job of every generation, is to make sure that those incredible documents that talk about freedom and justice and fairness, that Constitution that was conceived and signed where I'm from in Philadelphia, it's the job of every generation to make sure that those words actually mean something in our lifetime. That's our responsibility. And it's our responsibility, certainly in this moment, to say no to a guy who thinks he's going to be a king. I will tell you this, I am not bowing to a king. I'm not kissing the ring of a king. I'm not bending the knee to some guy who would be a dictator. And if you watch the official White House pages, he wants to be Pope now, apparently. And he can't even do the damn job that he has right now. So here's what I know to be true about this moment. Yes, we are up against an authoritarian who believes that the rules of this country, the laws of this country, don't apply to him. We are up against people who are so incompetent and so disrespectful to the service of those in uniforms that they put confidential war plans just on signal. We are up against people who are so out of their depth that we have a Secretary of Education who doesn't know what the hell is going on. And we are up against people like Representative Joyce who have no spine and refuse to show up and do their damn job. Now I will tell you this, I know that they're trying to rip away health care for millions of Pennsylvanians, but let's be very clear, members of Congress have great health care. They have wonderful health care for themselves and for their families. And so this guy has the capacity to go like get a spinal implant if he needs one, I'm sure. But I will tell you, as somebody who has run for office, it's hard work. And I don't know why the heck you would do all it takes to be a member of Congress, to then get there and just be a seat filler. To not fight for the people of Adams County. To not fight for the folks of Central Pennsylvania. To not stand up for our Constitution, for our values, for our laws. To not stand up for our military families. To not stand up for our farmers. To not stand up for our small business owners. What the hell are you there for? You know, they just get up, they stand up, they clap when he says, God, what the heck is that? But this is what I also know. That we have to be a party that welcomes everybody. And a party that is not driven in opposition to something, but a party that actually believes in something. Now I know that this is like shocks folks when a black kid from North Philly goes everywhere and says this point, but I'm going to say it again, it shocks some of you. Now most of you sit down so nobody will pass out. But I am not a Democrat because I hate Republicans. I'm going to repeat that. I am not a Democrat because I hate Republicans. I am not even a Democrat because I don't like the guy in the White House, and I don't. I'm a Democrat because when I look at my life, I see the fingerprints of folks who came before me, who understood their responsibility to make those words in our foundational documents mean something. I grew up in a working poor family in the heart of North Philadelphia. If you know Temple University, you know exactly where I'm from. My dad was trained as a social worker right there at the university. And one day he was lucky enough that this cute little thing named Kelly Kenyatta, my mama, walked in. Now, I always like to say this because it is fundamentally true. I hit the jackpot in that I got the best parents in the world. They were fantastic. Second only to your parents, who I imagine were wonderful people. But my parents, as great as they were, they did not like each other in the end. And so what that meant for me is I moved a lot by the time I graduated high school with 5 or 6 different places. I got my first job at 12 years old washing dishes at a little restaurant. And what that job did was give my mama a little bit of wiggle room. And some of you know about needing wiggle room. Some of you know about what it means to be in that grocery store and get up to the counter and you have to start taking stuff out because the number is a little bit too high. Some of you know what it means about having to sit down with your family and say, we cannot afford to stay where we are anymore. So pack what you can because we have to go. Some of you know about it. Some of you know what it means to not have access to the type of health care that every single person in this country deserves. You know what we mean. And so as difficult as things were, We were able to get some things out of that grocery cart because Democrats fought for SNAP benefits. So that's why I'm a Democrat. As much as we moved around, we always had somewhere to go because there were Democrats that fought for the belief in affordable housing. That's why I'm a Democrat. As difficult as it was sometimes for my parents with their jobs, if they found themselves in between jobs, they had something called unemployment because Democrats fought for it. And I had health care because of a little program called CHIP that you may have heard of because Democrats fought for it. And so I get a little incredulous when people say, well, what do Democrats believe? I'll tell you what we believe. As Democrats, we believe that in this country, the greatest nation to ever exist, that you ought to be able to work one good, family-sustaining job. Just one, not 2 and 3 and 4 and 6 jobs, but one good job. That job should afford you the ability to buy a home in a neighborhood that is safe. And that if you decide to have kids, that you get to watch them walk out that front door and go to a public school that is fully funded. And that public school ought to put them in a position to either start that small business or go and get their own family-sustaining job. And that when they're off and living their life, Democrats believe that you ought to retire with a level of dignity and decency, and you ought to be able to do it in the same home where you raised your kids in the first place. That's what we believe. And Democrats believe in this idea that the government should make sure that you have food on the table, but they don't get to dictate who sits at it or what you talk about when you get to the table. That's your business. And it's so interesting to me that we have Republicans who told me they care about freedom, and all they want to do is be at your damn dinner table telling you what to talk about, what to discuss, who can be there, and what your family looks like. That's not the type of freedom that I believe in. I think if the government is not making your life better, they ought to leave you the hell alone. People say I'm libertarian now. They ought to leave you the hell alone. So here's what we have to do in this moment. I look forward to answering every single question that we can get to. The first thing we have to do, and it's a reason I talked about Gettysburg, I talked about Selma, I talked about Seneca Falls. But there is a reason that would-be autocrats and dictators try to go after history first. It's a part of a strategy. It's part of a strategy. We should be very clear, right? As dangerous as Donald Trump is, as feckless as folks like Joyce are, these folks are like not new when you think about the long arc of history. They're not new. Even Make America Great Again is not a new slogan. That's a recycled slogan with some recycled ideas from a recycled old man who was out of his damn depth in the White House. But we should be very clear about this. That this country, when we face big moments like this, when we were up against McCarthyism, when we were up against all of the different movements that I mentioned, for suffrage, for civil rights, for equal justice, for workers' rights, it was never one person who came in and swooped in and fixed it. I think about the miners' strike in Scranton that many people say started the modern day labor movement. You had a bunch of Polish folks, and Irish folks, and Italians who couldn't even speak the same language but who understood that they were getting sick going in those coal mines. The coal barons were making off with a lot of money, but the people who were going down sometimes getting trapped, and if they were lucky, they got to come out and deal with this thing that we now know is called black lung. But their families were barely making it. And so they decided that they had to figure out how to talk across language, talk across region, talk across a lot of different experiences that they had, and organize together to be treated with dignity, decency, and respect. That is how we've always done it. And so there is a tactic of historical revisionism that dictators and autocrats use. Because if you can control the narrative of the past, then you can try to dictate the future. Because if we make this moment about one person or one politician, we've lost the thread. We already have a politician who says, I alone can fix it. We already got that guy. I want more political leaders who say that we can fix it together. We can do it together. So I did not come here today, my friends, asking you to join the cult of personality of Malcolm Kenyatta. My husband would not join my cult, and he knows me really well. So if he wouldn't join, I'm not asking you to sign up. I'm asking you to believe in you. I'm asking you to believe in you. And to believe in what we've always done as Americans. Make it about us. Because this is about us. And we're going to fix this together. And let me be clear on this final thing, and I know that we're going to have some folks who are going to come up and tell some stories. These folks are not going to win. Hear me on this. They are not going to win. And I know in this moment it feels dark, it feels scary. But when the history of this moment is written, it's going to be written about us. America is too big. It is too great to be ruled and broken down by one guy with a bad spray tan and bad hair. I promise. So let's do what we've always done as Americans. Let's remember who the hell we are. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be worried because things are happening that you should be scared and worried about. So that's a normal emotional response. So you can let fear visit you. You can let anger visit you. You just can't let it move in. It can stop there for coffee or tea or whatever you do. But it can't move into your guest room because hope lives in your guest room. The future lives in your guest room. And I am confident that if we keep doing what we're doing here today, showing up, meeting people who also understand the significance of this moment, there is nothing we can't accomplish. And so if you leave here today, and you only leave here talking to the people that you already knew when you got here, you missed the point of this moment. The point of this moment is not to just come hear me. The point of this moment is to know each other. And to know that there's a neighbor who you may not have talked to who also is worried about what tariffs are going to mean for our small businesses and for our farmers who are losing access to markets all across this country. You get to come here today and recognize that there's somebody else who's also concerned about their Social Security check and what that's going to mean about their ability to take care of themselves, pay their mortgage, and live in the house that they're in right now. You're going to meet somebody here today who also depends on Medicare and Medicaid like millions of Pennsylvanians that is at great risk right now. And if you meet each other, then you recognize that if you're not alone in this, then you recognize that there are things that we can do together to meet this moment. And we are going to meet this moment. And we're going to meet it in large part because of the incredible organizers. Please give them a hand, the organizers. One of you who's brave enough, bold enough to show up in this moment and demand better and different from the people who are supposed to represent you. And if we are lucky, and you all continue to do this work after today, we can have a congressman whose name is not represented in Joyce. We can have members of Congress who actually give a damn about standing up for Adam's family. Who actually believe that their job is to represent you, not represent the president, no matter what party they're in. And have a congressman that's going to actually